welcome to Naughty Boy Fight Picks UFC Boise Recap. As you would have just seen, providing all goes well and I can figure it out because I'm a digital lame, I have a logo and theme music now, which I've added. Just very slight things, obviously, but it's the little things that matter, right? So, shout out to my man Hamish Childs, the designer who did that logo. You can see it behind me there. So, the story with that logo is he did that for I think a t-shirt for me. And then I started using that logo all the time for my music. And the little character of me that he drew affectionately became known as the Naughty Boy. So when thinking of a name for the podcast, I thought I would stick with that. And so name of the podcast, Naughty Boy Fight Picks. Yeah, and that's it. I said it was coming and it's arrived, so that's what we have there. The music is from one of my old songs. I was looking through a bunch of old songs and trying to choose an instrumental from one of them, obviously to avoid having any licensing issues. So I've chosen that from an old song of mine called Yarp. And that production is by my bro Tony Douglas. Shout out to him, incredible producer. We've done a few songs with him. Not enough, unfortunately. I wish we'd done more. Maybe we will in the future, but we shall see. To the more astute viewers or listeners, you may listen or watch. I wouldn't blame you for just listening, because why would you want to look at my face for 40 minutes? You will see I'm in a new location. The reason why I didn't have a video out for last week, so yeah, it was difficult sussing the lighting in this room. It's quite difficult because the sun fucking pours in. It's pouring in at the moment, and yeah, just using basics, like adjusting curtains and shit and lights, and fuck, my dome looks hella shiny today because of that. Just bringing up my profile on betmma.tips because had a successful day betting yesterday. Would have been more successful had Scoggins not got robbed. I would have gone up about, I don't know, 6 or 7 units or something, but instead I was just 1 point something units up, which is way better than a loss or a bottom fist from the bottom that knocks you out. So happy that my shit is all in green. Yeah, it went up 1.74 units, so a measly amount, but way better than a loss, and on a little bit of a streak again, so feeling good. And yeah, last week I had fuck all time to look into the fight, so I was a bit concerned that I hadn't done enough study or enough tape, but we did all right and could have done better. I also fucked up on, because one of my parlays that came in, I entered that I put 2 units on it, but I actually put 3, so I would have got a bit more money, but whatever. It's not the biggest deal in the world. But yeah, that Scoggins one fucked me up because I had a parlay on him and Barcelos, who were both pretty large underdogs, and they both came in. So my parlay was paying like $6.12, and Scoggins got fucking robbed. I'm pretty sure everyone agrees that that was a bit of a robbery. So, I mean, I guess when you start betting on the sport, you have to accept that there's going to be shonky decisions. So it is part of the game, so you can't really whinge about it too much because it happens and you know it happens. So no point crying about it when it happens to you and fucks you up. And sometimes you're going to be the benefactor of it, although, yeah, I'm hard pressed to think of a time where I've been the benefactor of such a robbery. I did the Perez decision, which was controversial. I was a benefactor of that. Oh, actually I wasn't, because jury didn't come in, so he's part of that parlay, so it didn't matter. So I was not the benefactor indeed. Where are we? So yeah, quick note as well. Please do subscribe to my channel, like the videos and all that shit, obviously. Last week, because I had no content, and actually inspired by, I was at work and I saw lots of people posting, they're like, oh, Israel's on Joe Rogan podcast. And I started watching a bit, and it reminded me that so I used to have a podcast with my friend Dominic, shout out to him. Just a general podcast. We used to just try find interesting guests and chat with them about whatever. There was no specific topic or subject we delved into for the podcast. But we had Israel on there about 3 years ago, and I dug that up. Thank you to my boy Dan Morby. I dug that up and posted it on my YouTube channel. So if you go back into my recent videos, you can find that. About an hour-long podcast with Israel Adesanya. And it was super interesting to listen back on, because if you watch his interviews now and you hear him talk about, I've kind of, what does he say? He kind of talks about having envisioned this all, and he's done it all in his head before. And so you go back and listen to this podcast from 3 years ago where he wasn't in the UFC, and you very much get the impression that he was on that track then, and that his mindset has remained steadfast from that time. Another interesting thing about that podcast too was, throughout it, he mentioned Shane Young a bunch of times, and at the time I had no idea who Shane Young was, and now I certainly know who Shane Young is, because he just got a win in the UFC. So yeah, if you feel like checking that out, I would recommend it. It's a good listen, it's fun, it's laid back, and yeah, it's another great insight into Israel and who he's been, so that he is not changed at all, or he's just been on this track for some time, and it's cool to see him achieving his goals. So yeah, I went over my bets for yesterday, cashed on another city kickboxing guy, Alexander Volkanovski. That's 4 out of 4 for the month. So the lesson there is, if you see a city kickboxing guy fighting, bet on him. Their next matchups will be interesting, particularly Adesanya, Hooker, and Volkanovski. They're going to have some pretty big names, you'd imagine, in their next fights, but I would imagine I'll be betting them again because they keep winning. So, Boise results. I don't even know how to say Boise, Idaho. In the opening fight, where is it? Oh fuck, I'm not even on the right page, sorry. Here we go. Once again, I'm prepared. That's another thing I wanted to mention is, sorry, heaps of fucking around in this episode. I did want to not have my bed in the background for the new location, but obviously it's there. My room wasn't going to work. Nothing says I'm from the internet like podcasting from your bedroom, so here I am. We'll perhaps endeavor to do something about that when I get a proper camera, but for now you can see the bed in all its glory. First fight up we had Jessica Aguilar versus defeating Jodie Esquibel by unanimous decision. This was interesting because, they were scheduled to fight at Fight Night 131 Utica, and at the time I remember, so I listened to the Best Fight Picks podcast, which I think is really good. I enjoy it. That's one of my favorite picks and predictions podcasts, that one. I remember listening to that, and sometimes you can kind of guess who their max bet is, and for that I'm pretty sure it was Esquibel, because when the fight was canned, they were on Twitter saying, they were pissed, obviously, because that was their bet. Now, Um, this fight week for Boise, I heard a lot of other picks and predictions podcasters kind of echoing what the best fight picks guys had said back when they were scheduled to fight a few months ago. And they were all kind of pretty much mirroring, like, you know, I think, yeah, because those dudes are obviously good at what they do, and I understand people being influenced by them, but people out here pretending like it's their own original thoughts and insights. It's okay to credit people if you being tipped to a play by someone. Funny thing was though, and heaps of people were betting Escobar, and I imagine that it was because of the best fight picks guys. I could be wrong in some cases, you know, it's not a absolute blanket statement, but there's something going on there anyhow. Well, Escobar loses, lots of people lost money on it, so yeah, an example of tailing gone wrong. Personally, I stayed away from that fight. I'm real reluctant to bet, what do you say, fights where the skill level's not very high, because you can't rely on those fighters, and I think that's what happened there. Next fight, Mark De La Rosa defeated Elias Garcia. Exciting fight. Garcia, cousin of the Pettis brothers, I believe. He was on the show, Dana White Looking for a Fight recently. And he got subbed in round 2. I saw someone I follow on Twitter who'd done a prop bet on that submission, so good pick by them. And yeah, De La Rosa looks good. He's exciting. Is he also the husband of Montana De La Rosa, who fought last week, was it? Yeah. Next fight up, Liz Carmouche defeated Jennifer Maia via unanimous decision. Pretty one-sided affair. Who the fuck on Twitter was saying... So I saw someone saying that Carmouche and... what's his name? Uriah Faber look like twins, and I couldn't agree more, which reminded me of Joe Giannetti and Rose Namajunas looking like twins also. Strange shit going on in the UFC. So that was the prelims. De La Rosa vs. Garcia, exciting fight. The other two, not much to report about those. So on to the Fox Sports prelims, and first fight was Raoni Barcelos versus Kurt Holloway. Another that was just action-packed, and Barcelos looked incredible, got the TKO in the third round. Fun fight, and by this point I was like, holy shit, looking up the card, going from there, and it was looking pretty good. And yeah, Barcelos looks great. Reminded me heaps of Jose Aldo in looks, and a bit in the way he fights as well. So fun fight there. Next up, Said Nurmagomedov defeated Justin Scoggins via split decision. So how did they score it? Yeah, 2 judges. Obviously you had Nurmagomedov, and 1 judge got Scoggins, but fuck, I don't know how they drew that conclusion. I think, I'm trying to recall the fight, as you know, if you frequently listen, that my memory is shocking, but I think I thought Scoggins got both of the first 2 rounds, and he looked fucking great, man. He's a good fighter. And I feel terrible for him that he lost that. Saw on Twitter somewhere today, someone had posted a stat, fight metric counter. They found tweets of him disparaging Scoggins, so something strange going on there perhaps. But yeah, so I think Scoggins easily took the first 2, and in the last round, Said got him down and held him there for about half the round. But then Scoggins got back up and won the rest of the round, and I would argue he did better work on the feet than Said did on the ground. So you could argue that round for Scoggins again. But even so, I don't know how you gave either of the other 2 rounds to Saeed over Scoggins. So poor bastard, that must suck so much shit. Do a training camp, get in the fight, outmatch your opponent, and then get fucked by the judges. And yeah, so that fucked up my parlay that was paying big, which fucked me off terribly. Nonetheless, another exciting fight, and at this point the card was just humming. And next up was Alexander Volkanovski defeated Darren Elkins via unanimous decision. Again, two judges here gave a round to Elkins, which, I don't know, this looked like a domination to me. Elkins didn't have fuck all for Volkanovski. I think Volkanovski hurt him. We definitely hurt him once in the first round and kept a couple times in the second round, but he was putting it on him. Few strange decisions in there. Volkanovski going for the guillotine on a couple of occasions where you felt maybe his best option was to keep striking. And then later on in the fight, he shot a couple takedowns, but I don't know if they were, he was shooting those to get the fight to the ground or just to put another thing in Elkins' head of, yeah, I can take this to the ground also, or I'm going to shoot. So, which, you know, can open up the striking as well. So either way, incredible performance by Volkanovski. And then he proceeded to preemptively call out Chad Mendes if Mendes won his fight. So yeah, Volkanovski looking incredible, and that's a huge win for him. Definitely establishes him as a real contender in the 145 division. Next fight up was Alejandro Perez versus Eddie Wineland. Alejandro gets the decision, unanimous decision as well. Crazy that Scoggins Nurmagomedov was a split and Perez versus Wineland was unanimous to Perez. No judge gave that to Wineland. It was a close fight, and whilst I thought Wineland won it just on the eye test, I think it's reasonable to believe that Perez won. But yeah, I don't know. It was Perez backing up a lot, countering, and he did a decent job of that, but I thought Wineland landed the harder shots. He dropped them in round one, I believe. And I think Wineland could feel hard done by quite fairly. But yeah, Wineland looking good. Perez, yeah, that game, I guess it works, right? The backing up and counter striking. So from there we're on to the main card. Next fight I had a bet on, a sizable bet as well too. Kat Zingano defeating Marion Renault. And as I thought, Zingano, she reminded me of, what's his name? John Gunther with her footwork and stand-up. Pretty shocking, but she did what I thought she would do, and that is get the takedowns and pin Marion on the ground for the majority of the fight. And one judge gave her a 30-26 actually, but unanimous decision, cashed the 6-unit play on Zingano there, so was pretty happy with that. Interesting also that she's like coming off a bunch of losses, and in that division, one win kind of propels you back to the top. People are talking about her fucking being near a title shot, which is crazy. And I think, you know, the days she beat Nunes and Tate, who else did she beat? I forget, but those days are long past, and I think she don't want none of that Nunes smoke in 2018. Next up, fucked up severely here. I had a big or reasonable size play. I was actually going to put more, but I didn't. Glad I didn't now. On Miles Jury, I thought that given the layoff, the USADA shit, and his two previous fights being knockouts, I thought, him being on the receiving end, I thought Chad Mendes wasn't going to come back and look like the old Chad Mendes, but he certainly did. The knock on Miles Jury of looking really good against a certain level competition and then getting blasted by the really good guys continues, and Mendes is back in that division. That makes it quite interesting. There's a lot of guys coming up at 145, and Mendes, certainly his addition back in there makes things very interesting. He, in post-fight interviews, they discussed Volkanovski, and he didn't seem particularly jazzed on it, but he did entertain it somewhat. So I don't know. I'd like to see that fight. I think be really interesting. Next fight up, Nico Price defeats Randy Brown via KO with hammer fist. I'm sure everyone's seen this crazy shit. I had a play on Randy Brown, which I wished I hadn't made. He kept timing that knee, and his knee looks so effortless. Like it's as though he just lifts his leg off the ground, and his knee's at the face of his opponent. He kept timing that, and it's like, okay, you're tall, super rangy, and looks like you could get him in the striking, and he kept engaging in grappling and ground game and paid the price. So dumb shit by Randy Brown, dumb shit by me for betting him. And Nico Price gets a fucking emphatic victory, and everyone's buzzing about that. So good for him. What are people saying? Saw some people saying they'd like to see Nico versus Sage next. Yeah, I don't know if I want to see that personally. Next up was another controversial split decision. Rick Glenn versus defeating Dennis Bermudez. I personally wasn't mad at this decision. I thought Bermudez did fuck all with the takedowns despite constantly getting them. I don't know, I just kind of feel like if you score takedowns and you don't do anything with them, then effective striking should score more than those takedowns, and Glenn was doing a fair amount of effective striking. Real weird style on that dude. The strange thing he does with his head, I certainly found quite buzzy. But yeah, Glenn looked pretty good. Bermudez a bit lost on the feet, and then no, the takedowns are all fine and well, but you need to be able to do something with it really if you want to win fights. So I wasn't pissed about that decision. And I think what it was a real Glenn gave because Glenn seemed to be just giving up the takedowns real easily as well too. So that's something you'd hope to see improve from him. He didn't seem. Yeah, you see it often, guys that just kind of seem to accept the takedown rather than fight it really hard. Perhaps they're comfortable on the ground, but I don't know. I would have liked to have seen him fight the takedown with a bit more gusto. Next up, Sage Northcutt versus Zach Otto. I was really curious to see this fight and see what would happen. And from the beginning, it looked like Otto was gonna dad the naughty kid and just control him with dad's strength and hold him down, and it was going well for him. But I think, was it second round where Sage got him? I believe so. I think he got a takedown and Sage got up, and man, Sage's explosiveness is crazy. Like, it reminded me of McGregor versus Mendes, where he'd been held on the ground for 2 rounds, and then he got up and he just was like, alright, this is my window, I'm gonna fucking finish this dude. Reminded me heaps of that. And Sage, something I noticed about Sage in this fight was the precision and accuracy of his striking. There was one point where Otto was up against the fence, guarded up, and Sage popped a hook around his guard and just like cracked him right in the temple. It was a beautiful shot, and just the placement seemed really measured and considered, and yeah, he just popped him right in the spot. Uh, but yeah, Sage is explosive and powerful and still really young, obviously. I think he's had 8 fights in the UFC already, and he's 22 years old, and he's 6-2. So, yeah, it's heaps of time to develop him, and I guess it's just interesting what that track is going to look like, because looks like welterweight might be his division, so that may be sorted out now, which is good. I wasn't mad at him jumping around. It's like there's no fucking rush, you know. I saw people saying he needs to figure out which division he's in and blah blah blah. It's like, I don't think it fucking matters. He needs fight experience, and yeah, and wherever he's getting that, I don't think it matters too much, because you know he can begin his upward trajectory and you know any amount of years from now and still have a good career. I think at the moment it's just a development period, him being so young and whatnot. So still quite interested in seeing what happens with Sage, because he still looks to be improving, and he obviously has some natural gifts, and is an interesting character to say the least. Next fighter up, I want to shout out Rob Brown Betting. I don't know if people follow him or not, but he did a kind of promotion thing where if you subscribe to his newsletter, he'd give you a free bet. So I did it. Like I said, I didn't have much time last week, and I didn't have much research done. But I had been looking at JDS versus Blagoy Ivanov, and I suspected JDS would win. And then I was kind of just like looking at some stats and whatnot, and I saw that JDS had not won by knockout in something like, I forget what it was, maybe since 2014, 2013. Then go look at Blagoy's record, and he's never been knocked out. And I was like, fuck, could be worth a play on JDS by decision, thinking that JDS would quite like it. So we're seeing JDS in recent fights fight more carefully and fight behind his jab a lot more. I was like, fuck, he might do that in this fight, and it could go to 5 rounds. Betting a heavyweight fight over 5 rounds to go to decision is pretty scary, but I played it anyhow, especially after reading Rob Brown's breakdown for the fight. So I made a play on JDS to win, play on JDS to win by decision, and I had JDS as part of a parlay with, who was it? With Volkanovski, that's right. So cashed all those bets on that fight. If you saw it, you know what happened. Smart fight by JDS. Crowd got a bit angsty in places, but crowds are full of fucking dickheads often. And I enjoyed it. It was good performance by JDS. Couple moments here and there where Blagoy landed shots and it looked a bit dicey, but JDS won pretty easily in the end. Blagoy Ivanov appeared to have fucking very, very limited footwork, particularly when it came to attacking. He just kind of lunged forward with shots when he wanted to attack, and don't think he was really feinting, or he just was relying on countering and timing. He did have decent speed in his shots, but yeah, JDS did it pretty easily. I really like how you don't see it often, but JDS jabs to the body often. So he'll jab upstairs, jab downstairs, mix it up, and that's a really good weapon for him, keeping distance, especially with a guy like Blagoy who doesn't use any footwork or movement, really. So, in terms of what will happen with JDS now, I wouldn't mind the Stipe rematch, or who else could they put him against? Maybe Tuivasa, but yeah, it could be a bit soon for Tuivasa. I don't know. JDS looked alright though. He's definitely a different fighter from the one he was 4 or 5 years ago, but I mean, maybe he could be pulled into a war against the right opponent. This one, that wasn't going to happen, but yeah, good win for JDS. Good to see him back. I love that dude. He looks like a creative player from a video game. Blagoy, loved his walkout. That music was tough as fuck. And then like he's got the stab wound in his chest. I was like, oh fuck! I started worrying about my bet, but JDS handled that dude. So yeah, that was the whole card. Got a bit fucked towards the end. It was one of those ones where I was like, nah, just hurry up. Got a bit tired. Got old quick. But yeah, the Volkanovski fight rounded off 4 fights for City Kickboxer fighters in the last month, and they all got the win, so real impressed with them. Just gonna have a quick look at the UFC Hamburg card coming up next week. I will most certainly have a picks and predictions video up for this, so if anyone was disappointed that I didn't last week, I will be back this week with one. So got Shogun Rua versus Anthony Smith. Interesting there. Rua, big underdog, and he's been winning fights. So I guess people are very impressed with Smith coming off that last one, his first time at 205, and he looks heaps better there. But also don't know if there's too much you can read into that. Co-main event, Teixeira versus Anderson. Not super jazzed. You got Miranda versus Azaitar. No idea who that is. Tybura versus Struve. Stefan Struve, who knocked out Stipe Miocic, the greatest heavyweight of all time, apparently. Fuck, there's so many fighters I'm unfamiliar with. Some guy that looks like Kevin Gastelum, Hawk Parast versus Jacasey. Danny Roberts versus Alan Jouban. Nick Hine. I faded him in his last fight and won money, I believe, versus Hadzovic. Emil Meek is back. What happened in his last fight? Something strange, right? Can't remember. Versus Fabinde. Just bit my tongue. Fabinski. Someone named Taha versus Narimani. Ledet versus Rakic. Grant versus Bermudez. Jeremy Kimball. That dude again versus Stosic. Heaps of Slavic fighters on this card, but it's in Germany. Strange. And Stasiak versus Lou. Yeah. The only German fighter, or from what I can tell, is Nick Hine on there. And he's on the prelims, so fucking that card is a Sunday card, I believe, for Americans and Brits, maybe. Starts at 6 a.m. in New Zealand. It's gonna fuck my day up because I'll need to be at work and then I'll come home and watch it. But all good nonetheless. What was I gonna say? I guess everyone saw the shit with that began with Israel and Brennan Shaw. Israel calling him out on his bullshit, and then Dana White getting involved and then erupting, and Shaw apparently letting the cat out the bag about Dana White sleeping with Ronda Rousey, snitching, by the way. That's some unscrupulous shit to put out in the public arena. But yeah, buzzy shit, especially to see the New Zealand fighter in the mix there and the big news. Funny shit. Other thing that I would have got to last week, but obviously I didn't, but all week I've seen diehard Stipe fans going on about he should get immediate rematch, blah blah blah. A lot of whinging and hand wringing about that. So heaps of valid points are raised too. You know, he had that winning streak. Cody got immediate rematch. Joanna got an immediate rematch. So there's some validity to those arguments, but the points I would make against that are the fight wasn't very competitive. DC blasted him, and I know they're going to say, he got eye poked, and I've seen dudes saying, he was controlling that fight easily, and just nonsense, real biased nonsense. DC cleaned him up. He outthought him, he outfought him, outmuscled him, and outpowered him and won that fight easily. DC's game is so much more complex than Stipe's, and if Stipe were to rematch him, there's some major gaps he needs to plug before he fights DC again, or else we're going to get the same result. The other point of that, and so if I were to concede that Stipe does deserve an immediate rematch, what does DC deserve? So the champ now. So Stipe ain't champ, DC is the champ. What does DC deserve? I think after everything he's done in the UFC, everything he's achieved, he retires in 8 months' time. I think he deserves to make that money with the Brock Lesnar fight. So he's the champ. He's calling the shots now. He's always done the right thing. He's like fought the challengers. He's fought whoever stepped up to fight Anderson when Jones pulled out. He's always done right by the fans and the UFC, and I think in this twilight of his career, he deserves to get a big payday. So Stipe will just have to wait, and it might be good for him, man. He obviously has some things to work on. Be interesting to see if he gets back to the title and what the landscape looks like in about 8 months' time. So, sorry to the Stipe fans, but it ain't happening, and it don't need to happen. Like, fuck it. DC would beat him again easily, like he did the first time. So that's about all for today. What am I going to say? I'll be back with my picks for Hamburg in a couple days' time. I'll try and get back into some sort of schedule of that. My life has been all over the show with moving and whatnot. But once again, thank you for listening. Naughty Boy Fight Picks is the name of the podcast now. Like and subscribe, and check out that Israel Adesanya podcast from 3 years ago if you feel like it. Sure.